Have you ever felt like you're constantly drained? Like no matter how much you sleep, how healthy you eat, how much you try to take care of yourself, something is still pulling at your soul. Not just tired, but worn out. Not just mentally foggy, but energetically fractured. It's as if there's an invisible force reaching into your life, stealing from you when you're not even looking. And here's the most disturbing part: you're not imagining it. This isn't just a rough week or stress catching up with you. This is deeper. This is spiritual theft, emotional hijacking, a quiet invasion that doesn't knock at the door. It slips through the cracks in the places where you've been too available, too open, too generous with your energy. And the worst part, most people don't even notice until they're nearly empty, until they look in the mirror and barely recognize the soul behind the eyes, until the things that used to spark joy feel like obligations, until their silence starts screaming louder than their thoughts. If you've been feeling like that lately, it's not just burnout. It's the consequence of unprotected energy, and it's time to talk about how to take it back. See, energy isn't just some new age idea tossed around in yoga studios. It's science. It's reality. Your body, your thoughts, your emotions, all of it is energy vibrating at different frequencies. And just like your phone loses charge when it's connected to too many apps, you lose your life force when you're connected to too many people, problems, and patterns that aren't aligned with your soul. Every conversation you engage in, every thought you overthink, every situation you pour yourself into, it's all either charging you up or draining you out. The issue is, we've been conditioned to ignore the signs. We've been taught that giving everything of ourselves is noble, that being selfless is the high road, that love means saying yes even when your soul is screaming no. But what if that's the biggest lie you've ever believed? What if being constantly available isn't generosity, it's self-abandonment? And what if the very people you're trying to help are unintentionally feeding off your light just because you've never shown them how to respect it? You see, the world doesn't teach people to protect their energy, it teaches them to spend it. And every day you wake up, the spending begins. From the moment you check your phone to the second you finally collapse into bed, your energy is being traded, pulled, and siphoned, not just by people, but by systems, expectations, and invisible emotional contracts that you didn't even agree to. You've been taught to give before you feel, to respond before you pause, to serve before you ask. And the result? You're slowly dissolving into roles you never consciously chose. The nurturer, the fixer, the emotional sponge, the one who's always there, but rarely fully seen. You need to understand something. Your energy is your currency. And just like you wouldn't hand out your bank account password to everyone, you shouldn't hand out emotional access to people who haven't earned your trust. Because emotional access isn't free. It costs you your bandwidth, your peace, your nervous system. And the more you give it away without boundaries, the more you become energetically bankrupt. Look around your life right now. Who drains you without ever filling you back up? Who always needs something but never asks how you're really doing? Who pulls you into their chaos like it's your responsibility to fix it? These aren't just relationships, these are energy leaks. And no matter how good your intentions are, you cannot heal in environments that constantly deplete you. You cannot grow while being energetically starved. And you sure as hell can't fulfill your purpose if you're constantly playing therapist, peacekeeper, or emotional dumping ground for everyone else. The truth is, people are not stealing your life force maliciously. They're doing what they've always done, what you've trained them to do. And it's not about blame, it's about awareness.
Because the moment you start to wake up to how much you've been giving unconsciously is the moment you begin to take it back intentionally. And taking it back doesn't mean shutting everyone out. It means auditing access. It means learning the sacred art of no. Not no with guilt, not no with apologies, but a clear, grounded, unapologetic no that protects the frequency of your peace. Because not every crisis requires your attention. Not every message deserves an instant reply. Not every emotional plea is your responsibility to answer. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for them and for you is not to show up, to let them sit with their own discomfort, to let them solve their own chaos, to let them face their own shadows. Because when you always rescue, you rob them of the opportunity to grow. And when you constantly self-sacrifice, you rob yourself of the life you're meant to live. You were not born to be emotionally on call. You were not designed to carry everyone else's weight. You were created to be the energetic landfill for unprocessed pain. You were here to shine, to create, to breathe freely without the invisible hands of obligation choking your spirit. And that starts with reclaiming your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. It starts with silence, with choosing not to reply, with letting the phone ring, with pausing before saying yes. It starts with feeling the guilt and not letting it control you, with learning that discomfort is not danger, that boundaries are not betrayal, that self-care is not selfish, it's survival. And when you begin to live from that place, when you begin to protect your energy like it's sacred, the world starts to respond differently. People either rise to meet your new frequency or fall away because they can no longer feed off the old one. Either way, it's a win. Because the only people who get uncomfortable when you set a boundary are the ones who benefited from you not having one. And their discomfort is not your emergency. Their reaction is not your responsibility. You do not owe anyone access to your life force just because they're used to having it. You get to choose who drinks from your well. You get to decide who deserves your light. And anyone who truly loves you will never ask you to burn yourself out to keep them warm. So let this be your turning point. Let this be the day you stop handing out pieces of yourself like freebies at a gas station. Let this be the moment you realize that protecting your energy is not a luxury. It's the foundation of your healing, your growth, your sanity. And from this moment forward, every time you feel drained, ask yourself this: did I give this energy away, or did someone take it without my permission? Then act accordingly, because your life force is not up for negotiation. It is not a public resource. It is a sacred contract between you and the universe, and it's time you start treating it like one.
Now let's go deeper. Because if you've ever wondered why this keeps happening, why people seem to find you when they need something, but vanish when you finally need them, there's a pattern beneath the surface. This isn't just about being too nice. This is about a system that conditioned you to disconnect from your own energy before you even knew it was yours to protect. From a young age, most of us are trained to prioritize others' comfort over our own, to be polite, helpful, agreeable, to smile even when something inside is screaming. And when you're praised for being mature or responsible or easy to be around, what you're really being rewarded for is suppressing your truth. So what starts as people-pleasing turns into a full-blown identity. The caretaker, the fixer, the always available one. And over time, your nervous system gets wired for over-functioning. You start scanning rooms for tension before it even builds. You anticipate needs before they're spoken. You apologize for taking up space. You feel guilty for resting. And somewhere along the way, you forget that you were never supposed to manage everyone else's emotions. You were never meant to carry what isn't yours. But by the time you realize it, it feels normal. It feels automatic. And that's the trap. Because once your identity gets wrapped up in being the strong one, the supportive one, the reliable one, who are you when you stop? Who are you when you're not doing, fixing, solving? That question alone can feel terrifying. But the truth is, your worth never came from what you did for others. It was always in who you are, underneath the performance. And that's what most people are really afraid of losing, the version of you that makes their life easier at the expense of your own. Think about it. How many times have you felt the urge to say no, but said yes, because it was easier? How often have you watered yourself down so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable? How many hours have you spent rehearsing texts, emails, conversations, just to avoid being misunderstood? That's not living. That's emotional labor. And emotional labor isn't always seen, but it's always felt. It's the invisible toll of constantly monitoring your own expression to keep the peace. And the longer you stay in that loop, the more disconnected you become, not just from others, but from yourself. That disconnection shows up as anxiety, burnout, irritability, even physical pain. It's your body trying to communicate what your voice never felt safe enough to say. And here's what you need to understand. Every time you betray your own boundaries for the sake of harmony, you teach your nervous system that your truth is dangerous, that expressing yourself leads to rejection, that self-protection equals conflict. But that's not true. That's just old programming, outdated survival patterns that no longer serve the person you're becoming. And the moment you start choosing discomfort over betrayal, momentary discomfort over chronic depletion, you begin to reclaim your life force. Because protection doesn't always look like a locked door. Sometimes protection is simply honoring what your body already knows, that you don't have the capacity for this conversation, that this relationship no longer resonates, that you've outgrown the role they keep assigning you. And when you stop betraying yourself to avoid disappointing others, you begin to see who really sees you, who loves the real you, who can hold space without needing something from you. And most importantly, you begin to remember who you were before you became everyone else's lifeline. This is where transformation begins, not in grand gestures, but in small moments of self-loyalty. When you pause before answering a text you feel obligated to reply to. When you decline the invitation that you know will drain you. When you say, "Actually, I'm not available," without guilt. These moments might feel small, but energetically, they're massive. They signal to your subconscious that your needs matter, that your energy is valuable, that your presence is not a product to be consumed. And over time, those signals rewire your nervous system. They rewire your sense of safety. They allow you to exist without needing to constantly perform. And what happens then? You start attracting people who meet you where you are, not where you had to shrink to be accepted. You start creating space for relationships that nourish instead of deplete, for conversations that energize instead of exhaust, and for a life that feels aligned, grounded, and sacred. Not because you finally fixed everything around you, but because you finally honored everything within you. Because at the core of this work, of protecting your energy, isn't a rejection of others. It's a reunion with yourself. The self that was never too much, or too sensitive, or too emotional. The self that always knew when something didn't feel right, but stayed anyway. That's the part of you that's asking to be seen now. That's the voice that's growing louder, and you owe it your attention. Because the longer you ignore that inner voice, the louder the world becomes. And the louder the world becomes, the easier it is to forget the truth. That you are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to be something real for yourself.
let's talk about the final and most difficult part, integration. Because it's one thing to wake up and realize your energy has been leaking out for years, it's another thing entirely to protect it in a world that profits from your exhaustion. The hard truth is that reclaiming your energy doesn't always feel empowering at first. Sometimes it feels like grief, like loss, like disconnection, like loneliness. When you stop showing up in ways that betray your soul, people will notice. Not all of them will applaud. Some will question your silence. Some will criticize your distance. Some will pull harder, guilt trip you, even weaponize your old patterns against you. You've changed, they'll say, like that's a bad thing. But what they really mean is, you stopped feeding me with the parts of you that you never should have given away in the first place. And in that moment, you're going to feel the urge to explain, to prove you're still kind, still good, still lovable. But don't fall for it. Don't water yourself down just to make someone else feel comfortable in your growth. That's the old loop trying to pull you back in. That's the wounded part of you looking for safety in old dynamics. But you've outgrown that. You don't owe the world your depletion. You don't owe anyone a version of you that feels hollow just to keep them from feeling rejected. This is the price of alignment, not rejection, but redirection. When you start honoring your energy, your life will begin to shift. It may feel unstable at first, but that's just the old programming dying off. That's just your nervous system recalibrating to truth. Don't confuse that instability with failure. It's not falling apart, it's falling together for the first time. See, most people think protecting their energy is about avoiding toxic people. And yes, that's part of it. But the real challenge? It's protecting your energy from your own unconscious habits. It's not just about the external, it's about the internal agreements you keep making without realizing. The tendency to say yes when you mean no, the impulse to fix instead of feel, the compulsion to explain yourself when silence would have protected you. That's where the real energy drain lives, in the patterns, the reflexes, the autopilot behaviors you inherited from survival, not truth. You don't just need boundaries with other people, you need boundaries with your past self, with the outdated identity that was formed to keep you safe, but is now keeping you small. That part of you that got used to proving your worth by being useful, that part of you that stayed silent to avoid conflict, that part of you that equated love with sacrifice. It's time to thank that version of you for what it did to get you here, but then let it rest, because you're no longer living in the same reality that shaped it. You don't need to prove your goodness through exhaustion. You don't need to validate your worth through endless output. Your presence is not something to be earned. It's a gift. And when you begin to see it that way, you stop offering it to those who only love the labor, not the light. You stop making yourself available for every fire that isn't yours to put out. You stop being emotionally hijacked by situations that aren't even yours to carry. Because at the core of all this noise is a single, quiet truth. Your life force is sacred, and if you don't protect it, no one else will. Let's ground that into something real. This isn't about becoming cold or selfish. This isn't about cutting everyone off and building walls. This is about becoming discerning, intentional, sovereign. It's about recognizing that not every connection is a safe one, that not every conversation is worth your peace, that not every version of you is meant to survive the season you're entering. You don't owe consistency to versions of yourself that were born in survival. You owe integrity to the version of you that's being born now, in awareness, in stillness, in truth. That version of you doesn't react out of habit. It responds out of clarity. That version of you doesn't chase. It attracts. That doesn't explain itself to be understood. It lives in alignment and lets the right people understand naturally. And that version of you, it's waiting beneath all the noise, beneath the fatigue, beneath the emotional residue of being everyone's lifeline but your own. It's the version of you that rests without guilt, that says no without apology, that walks away without a story, that holds power without needing to prove it. Because real power, it's quiet. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't over-explain. It simply is. And you're allowed to be that. You're allowed to exist without being a solution. You're allowed to be loved without being useful. You're allowed to be whole without earning it through labor. So stop leaking your life force into situations that don't reflect your worth. Stop sacrificing your spirit on the altar of social approval. Stop chasing energy that's already showing you it's not reciprocal. The universe doesn't need you to fix everyone. It needs you to return to yourself, to your truth, to your essence. Because the moment you do that, really do it, everything else begins to shift. Your relationships recalibrate, your decisions simplify, your peace expands. And the people who belong in your life won't just accept the new you, they'll respect it. They'll rise to meet you, or they'll fall away quietly. Either way, your energy stays intact, and that, more than anything else, is the sign that you're finally living aligned. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just existing, but protecting what matters most. Your energy, your soul, your truth, your life force.